Patrick Mahomes is still on the modern-day Mount Rushmore. He's in the 4th spot. Lamar at 1, Josh Allen at 2, Burrow at 3, there's Mahomes, and then Jaden Daniels. So he is on the Mount Rushmore of active quarterbacks. Do you have an issue with this?
Well, listen, I haven't seen the segment. So I want to be fair. Is this a fantasy football ranking?
No, real football.
Because if it's a fantasy football ranking, it's totally fair. Like, I think that those guys, certainly last year, all 3 of them had better individual stats than Patrick. If this is an actual quarterback ranking, it's embarrassing. Because it is not, Brew, about quarterback wins. It is about all of those guys are obviously SBOB, and all of those guys play each other in the playoffs. Well, 3 of them play each other in the playoffs. Burrow's been, not making it the last couple of years. Yeah. And all of those guys play Patrick. He outplays them, and they lose.
Yep.
If you put them all together, those 3 guys, all of whom are ahead of Patrick, have played him each of the last 3 years in the playoffs and are worse than him across the board, except for, I guess, 8 more total yards per game. So that includes rushing to, give. That's total yards, which is a fair way to do it. And they lose. And so the only available knock on Patrick is his regular season numbers have been depressed the last 2 years. And really, I think most people 2 years ago, when he was coming off an MVP, Brew, mostly just blamed the drops. So last year was the first year it was like Patrick wasn't as sharp even though they were winning. To which I would say, I really hope for Ravens, Bills, and Bengals fans, one day we get to see what their quarterbacks look like if the regular season is the preseason for them the way it is for Patrick. If they've accomplished everything there is to accomplish in the sport again and again and again, and so they are kind of going through the motions in the regular season. If that happens, and then they're still putting up MVP numbers, then you know what? Maybe those guys in the regular season are better than that guy. But until then, anybody that isn't a fan of one of those teams saying, you know what, Joe Burrow, who has not been to the playoffs in 2 years, or Josh Allen, who every season ends at the hands of that guy, or Lamar, who the only knock on him is he is a playoff underperformer while Patrick holds every playoff record there is, that those guys are better than him. It's stupid. It's not. It's just a stupid take.
I agree with a lot of what you said. Obviously, I think Mahomes is number 1. I'm going to try to make some sense out of this because this startled me that Mahomes is 4. 1, and I don't think he meant this, but it's almost like you look at it and you say, oh, this is a regular season poll, right? A regular season ranking. Because, they've been better in the regular season. And as much as I love Lamar, even last year when he played pretty well in that playoff game, he still had the big mistakes that probably cost him the game. So there's no way you can put these guys ahead of Mahomes right now. What I will say, Nick, is this. And Mahomes, it's like, at least so far, these last 2 years, it's been like Brady in reverse, where Brady was kind of managing the game, winning Super Bowls, and then became spectacular individually. And Patrick came right out the gate was spectacular individually, won some Super Bowls, and now the last 2 regular seasons has been kind of mediocre. I will say this, Nick. If they don't win the Super Bowl this year, the Chiefs, or get there, if they don't win the AFC, and his numbers are again mediocre, I think this should be next year it would be, and assuming one of those guys beats
him in the playoffs, wins the Super Bowl.
This would be the last year that he could enter as number 1. Like if he has a 92 passer rating this season,
and they lose in
the playoffs or whatever, then you can move him down. I just think they still made the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
you know, and
going through
nobody
Josh
thinks
Allen.
they make him without Mahomes, even if you want to look at his numbers, whatever. And you also got to throw in this. I get it, he's got Kelsey, older version, but still Kelsey. He hasn't had the weapons either. Burrow has the best weapons of, like, I would rank it probably Patrick. You can go, I like Lamar. If you want to throw in the playoffs, you say Josh has been better in the playoffs. You can have those two interchangeable. And Burrow 4 for me, because the early season slumps are his fault to a large degree. And he's got by far the best weapons of the 4 guys.
Okay, so I understand Patrick doesn't. First of all, let's look at the numbers that Patrick put up.
Yeah.
The idea that we're like saying that this isn't a conversation, I think, is odd. Here are the real numbers. I mean, he's not even top 10 in yards per pass. He had 26 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, pass rating, and you could say he didn't have the weapons. Well, Joe Burrow didn't have a defense at all. Joe Burrow's losing games 35-33. Patrick's winning games 17-10.
Yes, but then, which is why, I've never seen, and at no point in my recollection as an NFL fan, was there ever a time where a quarterback who was regularly missing the playoffs was considered better than Brady because he put up better.
All right, enough with this nonsense. Okay, we're not going to go into these all random tangents right now. Because it's insane. Because first off, if you remember that graphic that went around, you had Joe Burrow putting up like better stats than Tom Brady did. But Tom Brady went undefeated that year, and Joe Burrow kept losing, and it was obviously because of his defense. We know football is a team sport. Okay, and this kind of shows it right there. That he's 18th in touchdown to interception ratio, 17th in passer rating. 6.8 yards per pass, 26, and he throws, I already do this all the time, he throws the shortest passes and gets the most yards after catch. And yet, 15-1. And you look at other quarterbacks that have significantly better stats, and stats that are not juiced up, not like they have better stats because they're down by so much, and so it's the fourth quarter, prevent defense. Like, that's not what Joe Burrow's story was and other quarterback story. This isn't like a Dak Prescott type of thing. But also with the whole lack of weapons, look what Baker Mayfield did. Baker Mayfield had both his wide receivers injured, and he still played great. He played awesome. He actually put up better numbers than Patrick Mahomes. So we can't just go by weapons. We're not going to pretend like Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson have been just flushed with like elite weapons. This is always a difficult thing when we're looking at this over the years, because they've all had at different moments, different levels of weapons, defenses, whatever it may be. So it's a little bit more difficult. Last season, Patrick Mahomes absolutely had the hardest situation from a receiver standpoint among these specific quarterbacks. Joe Burrow, without a doubt, had the worst defense imaginable. Patrick Mahomes, without a doubt, had the best coaching situation with Spags and Spags and Andy Reid. So it's always kind of going up and down and fluctuating a little bit in terms of like, what do you got? What don't you have? What do you got? What don't you have? So it is a conversation. And we know if we're not just going to by wins and losses, because we can't. I made another video talking about this. If you want to just go by wins and losses and head to head and this or that, well then Jalen Hurts then is above Patrick Mahomes. And I know for a fact Patrick Mahomes fans don't believe that. I don't believe that. So it's just like, that's why you can't just go by, well, what about playoff? What about head to head? Like Nick Wright tried to do. And, he went through each quarterback head to head. All of them together, head to head, head to head, head to head. So you would have to do that for Jalen Hurts. And I'm not going to turn this into a Jalen Hurts video because I've already, made that separate argument. But it is a conversation to be had. And if you want to like make fun of and downplay Joe Burrow, you can't have it that way, man. You can't be out here saying that Andy Reid is the greatest coach in NFL history, something that Nick Wright has argued. That Spags is the greatest defensive coordinator in the NFL, which Nick Wright has argued. That Travis Kelce is the greatest playoff performer of all time, that Nick Wright has argued. That the Kansas City Chiefs defense is one of the best defenses we've ever seen in the NFL over these last couple of years, that Nick Wright has argued. that Rashee Rice is special, is an absolute elite wide receiver, called him Rashee Jerry Rice, that Nick Wright has argued. That Pacheco is an elite top running back in the NFL, runs like he's on fire, that Nick Wright has argued. And pretend like that doesn't then help him win games, important games. You can't point to football games with the Ravens, the Bengals, the Bills, and say, look at that coaching staff. Look at those players rise to the occasion in those games, in those important playoff games. You can constantly point to moments of Kelsey stepping up massively in playoff games, of Andy Reid, of Pacheco, of Spags, insert names here, of guys truly rising to the occasion. Whereas, look on the other side, Lamar Jackson has Mark Andrews dropping the ball. Literally. You have Joe Burrow's defense just can't stop anything. O-line can't stop anything. Inconsistent run game. Josh Allen has to make the play of his life. Hits his receiver in the hands. Drops it. Whereas the year before, you got Travis Kelce making these diving, catches against the Ravens. Those are the differences. And you have to have that honest conversation. I'm not putting Patrick Mahomes at 4, to be very clear. I should have opened with that before Kansas City Chiefs fans and Mahomes fans lost their mind. But it is a conversation to be had. And you can't just pretend that Patrick Mahomes just, is just unstoppable in the playoffs. He plays amazing in the playoffs. That's not the story. It's just not. That's the illusion. He has not played great in Super Bowls. That matters tremendously. He played pretty average in plenty of other playoff games, in conference championship games, in the divisional round against the Texans. So we can stop with pretending that just everything Patrick Mahomes does is just unstoppable, unbelievable. Oh my God, how dare you question anything else? I mean, his defense in 23 held Lamar Jackson to 10 points. 10 points. That's outrageous. That's how special that defense was. 10 points. And it's also how awful the play calling was for the Baltimore Ravens. And again, it's another interesting conversation to have. Because when you talk about how other players step up and in big moments and playoffs, Josh Allen has a higher touchdown to interception ratio than Patrick Mahomes. That's just a fact. He has more total yards per game. Just a fact. This is in the playoffs. Just playoffs. So so that matters. Lamar Jackson, absolutely. There's real criticism for what he does in the playoffs. I just rewatched the game against the Buffalo Bills, and it was bad. The one in 21, I think it was, or 2020. Whichever the one where I think he got knocked out, but they only scored 3 points. It was bad. There was throws that he had for true touchdowns that he just straight up did not hit, and then got the pick six. So those moments are legit for Lamar Jackson that he is still working on reconciling. And that's why when you put it all in context, it's so interesting. Because I'm just looking at these 4 quarterbacks right now. And this is the real way how I look at it. If you have the worst team, if you have 2 teams that are just an absolute mess and not good coaching, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson should be the quarterback that you want over Joe Burrow, over Patrick Mahomes. If you have an absolute stacked roster with an unbelievable run game and an awesome O-line and great receivers and a great defense, you can make the argument, and great coaching staff, you can make the argument that you want Joe Burrow actually there over Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. If you have an awesome roster, an incredibly balanced roster with great coaching, great play calling, but you still have some things that you kind of have to overcome, rough around the edges and navigate some obstacles, Patrick Mahomes over Burrow, Allen, and Lamar. You know, if you're looking at it where you have no idea what your team is going to look like, you have no idea if they're going to be great, if they're going to be special, what the coaching staff looks like, what the story is, but you know that you're in the playoffs. It's the AFC Championship game. Who do you want between those 4 quarterbacks? You're going to pick Mahomes and Allen because they consistently step up. They both Allen and Mahomes consistently elevate in the playoffs. Consistently. It's actually kind of a shame that there's such a battle between Mahomes and Allen because they both are just, in the biggest moments in the playoffs, like they absolutely just ball, man. Absolutely ball. But again, you know, like Nick, I forget it was Nick or I think Bruce said about like, oh, Lamar, you know, he didn't play good enough. He kind of cost him the game against the Buffalo Bills. But there's a difference because, right, he did not start off great. The interception and the fumble. That is absolutely true. But then he played unbelievably amazing. But the team around him failed him. There's been so many times that Patrick Mahomes has turned the ball over, played poorly in the beginning of a game, but then his team did not fail him in the second half. And I made a whole separate video looking at all these other quarterbacks having fumbles, throwing interceptions, whatever it may be, and yet they still end up winning big games because their team rises to the occasion. The Baltimore Ravens in that moment did not rise to the occasion. That's just a fact. So that's why this conversation ends up being so much more complicated than we really give credit for it. But if you were if you were saying which quarterback do you want, like I almost want to just pick a neutral team, which ironically, like I'm thinking about, I have a couple options here. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, I know they won the Super Bowl. But if we're looking at it from like a great roster perspective, not sure about Sirianni. If I'm looking at it through like kind of Nick's mind, I'm looking at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, maybe the Detroit Lions. So when I'm saying neutral, I don't mean like bad. I just mean like completely separate from these 4 quarterbacks. Like if you had the Philadelphia Eagles as your team, who do you think would be the best quarterback to lead that team? Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, or Lamar? And it's like, I think that offense needs a pretty mobile quarterback to get the job done. So I would maybe pick him over Mahomes because Jalen Hurts had a lot of runs that they just don't do with Mahomes. So I would probably pick Josh Allen over Patrick Mahomes for, say, the Philadelphia Eagles. But if I needed less running, less mobility from my quarterback, I'm picking Patrick Mahomes because there was plenty of games in that game through that season that needed to be managed. And I don't 100% trust Lamar Jackson in some of these big moments to manage it. He's kind of shown that a little bit. He has. That's the reality. Jalen Hurts has elevated his game tremendously in the playoffs. Lamar Jackson hasn't necessarily. If you have a team now like, the Cincinnati Bengals, and you have to pick who do you want your quarterback to be, Mahomes or Lamar, it's like, I'll probably pick Lamar because of what Lamar can do. And, you need more, running production. It's like, give me Lamar. If you had a team like the Baltimore Ravens, who do you think would be better on that team, Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes? Patrick Mahomes. I believe it. So it's just like they all got different strengths and weaknesses. And to me, it becomes so dependent on what you need your team, what your team needs from you. It's Joe Burrow has obviously gone to the worst situation out of all these guys. Yes, he has some great wide receivers and effectively like nothing else. Okay? Bottom of the barrel run game year after year after year. Terrible defense. Bad O-line, etc., etc. Josh Allen has had a revolving door of coordinators and coaching. Inconsistent production from the run game. He's had to be the leading rusher in the vast majority of his playoff games. Like, those things matter. Lamar Jackson does need to play better in the playoffs. That is also a fact. So it's just like, again, we can kind of just keep going in circles. We can. But it was like, if you forced me to not know anything about any of these teams, I don't know anything about these teams, and I'm looking at it just from the biggest game. It's the biggest game. It's the playoffs. gotta go, gotta get after it. It's like I'm taking the closest I can get is I'm taking Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. That's who I'm taking ahead of anyone else right now. If I don't know anything else about the team. I look at Joe Burrow. If he played for the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl, would have he been able to deal with the pressure better than Patrick Mahomes? And it's interesting because Joe Burrow is actually the best quarterback in the NFL under pressure. He balled. I'm not going to go through his stats because I've already done that, but he balled. Do I think that the Eagles would have still got to him? Yeah. Would the receivers have been able to find a way through it a little bit better? Potentially. We saw what happened when the Eagles played the Bengals. They still beat them really good. I'm not going to say that I think that that if Joe Burrow, but that was obviously with the Bengals. But if Joe Burrow was specifically on the Chiefs, it's like, I think Joe Burrow probably gets beat pretty good. But Patrick Mahomes, his mobility in that moment wasn't enough. He could not escape it. He could not escape the pressure. Would have Lamar Jackson been able to escape that pressure? Probably better than Mahomes. Would have Josh Allen? Yes. Would have Lamar Jackson made better decisions than Patrick Mahomes? That's highly debatable. Highly debatable. How would have Allen been in a Super Bowl? I don't know. I mean, I think Josh Allen's got ice in his veins, but the way how he opened up that game against Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs in the conference championship game, that was like, I don't know what that was like. That was someone who was not playing with ice in his veins. I'm going to make the corniest joke ever, but I'm not going to. So, yeah, man, this conversation is actually so much sloppier and messier than anyone truly wants to give it credit for. And the reason why is because everyone has such firm and strong conclusions and opinions about these quarterbacks. And I understand why. And the fans go crazy and this, that, but then people can't make up their mind what lens they want to look at things through. That's the funny thing. Because again, you have Kansas City Chiefs fans who will brag about how amazing their team is and how amazing their GM is and how amazing their coaching staff is. But then when they want to talk about how great Patrick Mahomes is, they want to downplay all of that. And then it's like, well, you're saying Patrick Mahomes has no help, but then you also tell me that the GM is amazing. So then his GM must be doing a bad job. Huh? How does that make sense? You want to say, oh, wait, Patrick Mahomes is making all these wide receivers be great, and it's like he's throwing the shortest passes and getting the most yards after catch. That's a design. That's Andy Reid's fingerprints on that. Lamar Jackson fans want to say, oh, he's had no help, and it's like you're consistently at the top of the NFL with the most all-pros and most Pro Bowlers. Derrick Henry was an absolute tank and a monster. In one video, I was defending Mark Andrews, and they were bashing him and saying the only reason why Mark Andrews got touchdown passes is because everyone else was covered. And it's like, so then you're saying that Lamar Jackson has a great roster and great offensive weapons, so great that they leave someone like Mark Andrews wide open? So it's like, which is it? Oh, well, Patrick Mahomes didn't have a good O-line. When has Joe Burrow ever had a good O-line? So it's just that's why these things constantly get messy. Andy Reid's the best coach in the NFL. Okay, so that means not having Andy Reid hurts you. Well, so that's why we always just keep going in circles. And that's why it's like if you just look at just the stats, it doesn't work. If we look at, wins and losses, it doesn't work. If we look at head-to-head, man, I am taking the trio of Andy Reid, Spags, and Patrick Mahomes every single time over any of these other trios that can happen with Burrow, Allen, and Lamar. Every single time. I am putting my faith in Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and Spags. Every single time. I do not trust insert whoever the OC is of the day for them or their head coach, obviously, with Joe Burrow. I don't trust. I trust in terms of a defensive game plan. I will take Spags over Sean McDermott or Harbaugh every single day. Every single day. I got one game for my life to depend on it. Spags. That's who I want. Over Harbaugh, over Sean McDermott. No question about it. No question about it. that's what continues to complicate all of these conversations. So again, don't take this video as a way to be like, oh, see, Mahomes is not that good, or Lamar is truly the best, because I'm actually in a lot of ways not really giving an answer. I'm really not. So like nobody, I know when I think nobody should be mad, everybody will be mad. But it's just like what I'm trying to emphasize here is that it is indeed an actual conversation to have. And it's just, when Patrick Mahomes lost in the Super Bowl, a lot of people were like, well, he has no weapons and his O-line and this and that. And it's like, well, he had those weapons and he had that O-line and he was able to beat the Buffalo Bills. He was able to beat the Houston Texans. And also, how great do you think the O-lines and weapons have been for the other teams around the league? So you can't just offer that defense for Patrick Mahomes. Joe Burrow is such a special quarterback, but he's just been on such an awful team. And it becomes so difficult then to like reconcile that and figure out like, what do we do with that? And saying like, oh, well, he just hasn't been in the playoffs or this, that's like, that means nothing to me. If Patrick Mahomes, I mean, think about it. Patrick Mahomes was on the Cincinnati Bengals. They wouldn't be in the playoffs. You can't play any better than Joe Burrow. And you can't say, whoa, Patrick Mahomes would have done this and that. And it's like, no. We've seen Patrick Mahomes lay lots of eggs and not play great. We've seen it. So you can't just act like Patrick Mahomes would just be perfect year after year after year, because we know that's not true. We know that's not true. Would Joe Burrow lead the Kansas City Chiefs to the Super Bowl with the team that Patrick Mahomes had? I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that either. So like, all of these things can be true at the same time. And when lots of things are true at the same time, it becomes very hard. Because it is kind of like, how do we figure out when 1 + 1 = 2, but in this weird universe, 1 + 1 also equals 11? It's like, well, how do we do math when those are the laws governing the logic? And it's like, it's really hard, because it's hard to make sense. That's why these conversations are never ending. This will be my last point. Michael Wilbon, I think it was. I forget when he was when he was talking about this. But I think he essentially was referencing Michael Jordan and LeBron or whatever. But it was like talking about, I think, like the Chicago Bears. I think I've been meaning to find this clip. And he kind of talked about it. He's like, listen, man. He's like, these conversations always change. You ask me on one day how I feel, and it can be completely different, days later. And that's what happens. And when you start airing your takes out again and again and again, a lot of people make fun of Colin Cowherd for being like, flip-flopping and contradicting himself. And I think it's a combination of things. Sometimes your opinion consciously changes because you're like, I used to feel this way and now I don't. I got new information and I'm changing my mind. That's a good thing. When you get new information and you update your views, that makes sense. But other times it's just like, you know what? In one moment I feel this way, and in the next moment I just feel differently. One minute I look at Lamar Jackson and think, oh my goodness, this guy is out of his world. I watch a game, I rewatched that game, and granted at this point it was a couple years ago, so it's no longer like an updated view of who he is, but like I looked at that game against the Buffalo Bills and I was like, oh man, like that was not a great game by Lamar Jackson by any stretch of the imagination. I look at a game from Josh Allen, I'm like, Josh Allen is a beast. He never wavers. And it's like, well, that first drive, he was pretty lucky that he didn't throw an interception. And it's like, all right. Patrick Mahomes does always step up in the playoffs. You do got to always be nervous about what he can do. Well, he was pretty poorly in multiple Super Bowls. He did not play great against the Houston Texans. Yeah, they won, but like you're not leaving that game thinking that he played unbelievable. So it's just like things are constantly changing. We're constantly getting new information. Constantly. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully I equally made Lamar Jackson fans angry, Josh Allen fans angry, Joe Burrow fans angry, and Patrick Mahomes fans angry. And the Jayden Daniels fans that are watching this, they're like, hey, bro, I just watched you for 30 minutes. You didn't bring up Jayden Daniels once. He's not invited to that party just yet. If he does what he did last year, he can be invited to that party. He's not invited right now. Those are the rules. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Patrick Mahomes being number 4 in the rankings? To be very clear, one last time, I am not saying that I'm putting Patrick Mahomes 4 or that I'm taking those 3 quarterbacks ahead of him, but let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.